That's where that focus comes down into play. Most people focus in on what's going wrong, what's not working, why they feel confused, why they feel stuck, why they feel like they're searching for more, rather than focusing on what do I need to change.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Connor Kraft, and I'm here with Scoggins today, and today we're going to be answering your questions on how to get out of a rut. What's up, man? How you doing?
Good, man.
Sweet.
Yeah, so audience has been asking a lot of questions about getting out of rut. People are getting stuck, and we're trying to get them unstuck, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at a rut, what is a rut? A rut is nothing more than a specific set of behavior patterns you keep repeating, right? So when you get to understand that ruts are basically the pattern that you've got following, all you have to do is disrupt the pattern.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So the first question, I'm just going to dive right in, is why are people unmotivated? Well,
I think motivation, it really comes down to a lack of a few things. The first of which is clarity, right? So one of the things that holds most people back is the struggle of having enough insight, enough clarity to know what to pursue. And when you don't know what to pursue, you typically pursue nothing. And as a result, you have a decrease in motivation because you don't know what you're aiming at, right? So it comes down to focus. It's like aiming a sniper rifle. Right? If you have a sniper rifle and you're trying to, we'll call it kill a deer, for lack of a better word. I know it's a bad analogy for some folks, but just hang with me for a second. If you're trying to kill a deer, right, and you have a sniper rifle, but yet you're aiming at a tree, you're less likely to hit the deer.
Yeah, I would think so, right?
Yeah, so it comes down to clarity and focus, right? So you want to understand what it is you're aiming at. And, in working with the people that we've worked with, we see a lot of people who do not take the time to really articulate or even draft out what it is they want, why they want it, and what they're hoping to get from it, right? And as a result, they have a lack of clarity, which takes us to the next point, which is this sense of direction, right? If you don't have clarity, you don't have a clear direction. If you don't have a direction, you don't know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. I know it seems like counterintuitive or like super simple, but at the end of the day, being in a rut and trying to figure out what this momentum thing is to get you out of that rut really comes down to getting clear, getting focused, and getting honed in on the direction you're going.
Clarity, that's so powerful. I really think that you hit on a few things. Could you say again what you said near the end? You said something like clarity leads you to direction.
Yeah.
I think that was really powerful.
Yeah, so in essence, if clarity leads you to direction, direction leads you to focus, focus leads you to intention, intention leads you to action, and action leads you to results. Right? So if you're stuck in a rut and you've been stuck there for some time, you got to get clear, right? You got to hone in on where you're going. You got to focus in on it to figure out what your intentions are behind it, and then create actions to get there, and then results. And when you do that, at the end of the day, then you can commit, and you'll find it a whole lot easier to be self-motivated rather than focusing on some kind of external motivations.
That's awesome. Let's dive a little bit deeper, because I have another question here that says, what are some of the first steps that someone should take to even get out of a rut?
Yeah. I think, when it comes to getting out of a rut, I think one of the easiest things to do is to take the time necessary. Most people have a hard time sitting still. Seriously, they have a hard time. Yeah, they have a hard time sitting still with a paper and a pen in a quiet place. One of the techniques that I personally use is I've got my auto playlist on YouTube where I have like just a super chill piano track or whatever. I never thought of myself as much of a piano person, but I like the way it sounds. I can't play it, of course, but sitting in a place and time with a paper and a pen or some kind of note-taking device where you can actually be introspective, have some reflection time, and then simply sit down to basically decide, right? Decide, make that decision. And what you're doing in that moment is you're taking the area that you want to focus on, you're taking the clarity you're trying to bring to it, the direction you want, and you're tying it directly to an emotion. Well, if you can't tie it to emotion without putting yourself into an area where you are going to actually experience an emotional connection to what it is you're trying to do, which is why I use the piano technique. I'll have a piano track playing, and it could be anything. It could be a guitar track. You just want it to be super chill. You don't want to be like,
is that, right? Do you think that being in a rut is in some part a state of mind?
Being in a rut mostly is a state of mind, okay? Wayne Dyer used to say this a long time ago, and I might botch this a little bit, but Dr. Wayne Dyer was a thought leader that passed away a few years ago, and he used to say this. He used to say, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, right? That's where that focus comes down into play. Most people focus in on what's going wrong, what's not working, why they feel confused, why they feel stuck, why they feel like they're searching for more, rather than focusing on what do I need to change? What do I need to identify? Who do I need to talk to? What kind of relationships do I need to build, right? Where am I trying to go, right? They don't segment it down to the 8 pillars of life that we've talked about before in some of the other videos we've done on this channel. And until you do that, you're going to have a really hard time honing in on any kind of focus to create the momentum it's going to take to break free from a rut. So number one thing you've got to do today, the simplest thing is decide that you want it differently. Decide. Like, done. I'm ready to go. It's now. Like, I'm not waiting anymore, right? Yeah. Because people, every day you wake up and you let yesterday happen again today, every time you do that, you are holding yourself back. You have to decide, I'm doing something different. Something better's coming. I'm going to do it now. And that decision comes by getting clear, right? So I think that that's one of the primary things that you got to do. The next step in the process is learn a new way. All right, learn a new way. People, you guys can hang out here at this channel all the time. We've got all kinds of videos here to help you get unstuck, help you build unstoppable momentum and keep you moving forward. But by all means, if it's not here, get it from somewhere. Learn a new way. Model successful behavior. I recently had a kid come to me who's starting a brand new business. He wants to get into real estate, which is great. Real estate's a great business to get into. And he's like, well, I think I need to borrow $1 million. I'm like, you don't need to borrow $1 million. Well, I need to buy and flip some properties. Like, yeah, you do, but you need to start small, right? The last thing you want to do is to go borrow $1 million or try to borrow $1 million with no collateral, which is not going to happen anyway, right? To try to renovate 5 or 6 different properties. You need to start with one property, see how it goes, right? Rather than bankrupting your whole life. Well, he wouldn't have learned that any other way other than talking to somebody who's actually done real estate flipping, right? There's a right way to do business and a wrong way to do business. And most people do the wrong way, which is just going off of sheer gut instinct, not having any kind of perspective. You know, so when you take the time to decide on what it is you're trying to accomplish, why it is you want to accomplish it, then the next step is going to be learning how to accomplish it well. The quickest way to learn how to accomplish it well is to learn from somebody else. Because experiences are, there's really two ways to learn, right? By your own experiences, which can be painful, or you can learn by somebody else's experiences that have already figured it out to help you plot a course. And then that person can also, in many ways, help you kind of do the next step, which is put in the reps, right? You know, we talk about the 7 levels of life mastery on several other videos we've done here. And we talk about this awakening phase, we talk about the awareness phase, we talk about mentorship phase. Well, the next phase is obviously implementation, right? Implementing what it is you've learned. And then doing it over and over and over and over again to measure your overall success. And when you fall off the horse, so to speak, or you don't get where you're trying to go, or you have a breakdown that day, then you stop. You reassess and start again. Most people have one roadblock pop up and they just stop altogether.
Oh yeah.
Right? That is the definition of a rut. Sometimes the biggest thing you can do to get out of a rut is to force your way through the behavior systems that you've put in place that are holding you back to begin with.
There's a lot to unpack there, and I have a couple of questions, but I want to first dig into this theme that I noticed when you were talking about the real estate thing. Yep. You mentioned what sounds like you were telling them to start small.
Yeah.
Let's dig into the importance of that a little bit.
Well, the biggest way I know how to explain it, so a lot of people nowadays know me as a successful entrepreneur of multiple businesses. They know about my writings and my books and all that kind of stuff. They know about the videos and the teaching. What they don't know is I didn't start there, right? What most people don't understand is my first company, I started literally by pulling lumber out of the trash piles, right? To create the tools that I needed in order to start a construction company, which is one of my flagships. What that taught me is I don't need a bunch of debt. I don't need a bunch of money. I don't need a bunch of just all these things that we say. In fact, I didn't have branding. I didn't have a logo, right? I didn't have a truck. I didn't have equipment. I didn't have team members. I didn't have. What I did have was an opportunity. And in that opportunity, I needed to do as well as I possibly could with what I had rather than focus on all the crap that I didn't have. You see, far too many people are focused on what they don't have rather than amplifying what they do have. A skill set, a thought process, a technique, a relationship. Starting small eliminates risk or limits risk. Starting small allows you to develop mastery long before you make stupid decisions. I would rather make my stupid decisions early on without as much at risk rather than making decisions with a lot at risk and having one stupid decision.
Oh yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So starting small at the end of the day is about understanding that you got to start where you're at and stop giving yourself a bunch of excuses why you can't move forward and then just start.
What do you think makes it so difficult for people to start small? Do you think it's comparison?
There's a lot of different things that cause people to avoid starting small or to avoid starting altogether. One of the first things is this expectation that it has to be right and perfect the first time out. Okay? Now, maybe that comes from an insecurity. Like for me, for a number of years, I was driven by insecurity and fear, right? I started my first company while I was homeless and tried to start building my way up. And as a result, by the time that I actually started making income, I wasn't sure how to actually have the character to kind of use it and kind of propel it. And as a result, I focused on making sure all of my sticking points were focused out of insecurities and fear. Now, that could be directly tied to comparison. I did have competitors in the market that already had the nice Rolex watches and going on all these trips and had expensive cars and doing all this kind of stuff. And while I think I hungered for some of that, what I really hungered for was identity, right? And I made the early entrepreneurial mistake where my identity was tied to my level of success in business, which means I kept challenging myself over and over again. And then I later learned that my identity was far better wrapped up in my faith and then also wrapped into becoming rather than being. In other words,
journey.
Exactly. The journey is where the power is. The journey is what creates momentum. The journey is what helps you get out of the rut, right? Is not looking at everything like it's a finite destination, right? I literally started my first company with absolutely nothing. And there's nothing special about me, right? The only thing that's special about me whatsoever, or any kind of indicator, was I didn't have a choice to give up. Like if I gave up, I wasn't gonna eat. If I gave up, I wasn't gonna have shelter. If I gave up, you see what I'm saying? Far too many people want to have all the perfect conditions, want to have all the perfect things in place. Dude, I'm telling you right now, the most successful entrepreneurs on the planet, study them, right? When you study them, they just got started. And then they just didn't give up, right? The people who make the biggest mistake in entrepreneurship or in business or anything like that, more times than not, are looking for a perfect environment, or they're looking to leverage their way, i.e. borrow money to make their perfect way. And then they end up making a stupid decision that they could have made if they started small that ends up taking them out of business.
Wow. Another theme that I noticed was you talked a lot about focus, like your focus is in the wrong place. And especially when we're talking about, people who feel like they're in a rut. Like I've been in a rut before. And it literally feels like every day you're waking up and your day is already over before it's even started. You feel like you're already destined to be doomed. How much of that, you say a lot of that is about focus. What is the key to getting yourself out of focusing on the negative and focusing on what's going wrong so that you can take comfort in starting small with where you're at right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, you got to push yourself. You got to push yourself. You got to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is always dictated by your normal, whatever your normal is, right? If you're used to normally getting up and like kind of putzing around the house, not having a plan, not doing something that's going to increase your mind, your body, your spirit on a regular basis, then you're going to be hard pressed to get clarity. Okay? And if you remember back from a few minutes ago, clarity equals direction, direction equals intent, intent equals action, action equals results. Right? So if you're starting yourself off wrong, how are you expected to actually move forward and actually create momentum? Right? We have a principle that we teach, or something that I like to refer to as traditional versus transformational. Okay? If you start off your day, every day, by your outlook, like what happened yesterday, the traumatic events that may or may not have happened in your life, the letdowns that you've let yourself down, or the mistakes that you've made, or the blame, shame, guilt game, so to speak.
Basically being upset with yourself for where you are right now for any reason. Right.
One of the things, in fact, to a side note, and I'll get back to this in a second, but the side note there, one of the things that I've discovered most is we talk more harshly to ourselves than we do about others. And if you're more harsh with the way you talk to other people, I guarantee you're beating yourself up on a daily basis behind the scenes. Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? So what you feel always comes up out of your mouth, right? By doing so, as you begin to look at this entire thing of shifting and growing and maturing, the greatest thing that you have to do is to really start with what you want. Start with the end in mind. It doesn't matter if it's in your relationship life. It doesn't matter if your spiritual life, your financial life, your physical life. It doesn't matter where in your life you're trying to get traction. You have to clearly define where it is you're trying to go and why you're trying to go there, right? And then you got to get up and put in the work, period. So when that thought pops in your head about I'm not enough or I'm not worth it or it's not going to work out for me or this victim crap, you have to be strong enough in that moment to say, oh, freaking watch me.
And is that why it's so important to have a plan pre-laid out for you? Because if you don't, I've run into this before where when those negative thoughts and things come up, I've noticed if you haven't already told yourself exactly what you intend to do and what you need to do, what your plan is, it's easy to just run amok.
Well, the reality is the negativity that you're bringing to the table, the equal and opposite attraction, or the equal and opposite action, if you will, right, has to be almost 10 times as strong. Notice a second ago when I was like, I was like, well, you know, I'm not enough. I'm not worth it. And I was like, oh, freaking watch me.
Yeah, you literally.
You have to come back at it with force.
Got it.
You know, a good friend of mine who's a pastor friend of mine, you know, obviously I'm a person of faith, so I kind of work through this a little bit, and I believe in prophetic words and this kind of thing. He actually spoke over me. He said, you have to be 1 part lion and 1 part lamb, and you have to have the wisdom to know the difference.
Like for what moment in time you need to be which?
Exactly. So the greatest moment you can have in becoming a lion in your own life is at the moment when your identity is questioned or your negativity is surfacing. That's when that roar comes out, that lion, that grit, that grind, right? The lamb comes out when you're trying to be in a state of nurturing. Hey, I did pretty good today. I know I could do a little better, but I'm proud of where I got to today. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You have to be able to turn those switches off and on. And the easiest step to do that is to be able to identify in the moment a negative thought, a negative belief, a negative whatever. And negativity very simply does nothing more than hold you back. So if the thought that you have is going to hold you back, it's like somebody holding onto your shirt and tugging you backwards, then that's the very thought that you need to come at it with the lion atmosphere. Right? You got to be gritty. You got to be tenacious. You got to be persevering. You got to have a sense of never giving up. I am where I am today because someone taught me how to never give up. Did I want to have give up moments? Absolutely, 1,000 times 10. Right? The trick is just getting up the next day and trying again. That's how you get out of a rut. You know, in the new book we've got coming out, one of the things I talk about is this technique of getting out of mud. Right? So we've all been in that moment where we've stuck in mud.
It's like quicksand.
Right? Well, yeah, and it's like quicksand, but you put your foot in the mud, right? Maybe you don't know how deep it is, maybe you know whatever. You go to pull your foot out and all of a sudden your boot stays in the mud and your foot comes out, right?
Yeah.
The suction's there.
Right.
Did you know there's actually a technique to get out of the mud? It's very simple. You raise your heel first and then draw up your toe. You literally bring up your heel and then bring up your foot. What most people do is the mud's here and they just try to bring up toe first, which hits immediate resistance. Which means if you're hitting immediate resistance, all it means is you're using the wrong technique. So the trick is identifying the limiting belief, challenging that limiting belief, and then changing your technique, and you'll move forward.
That's so powerful. You know, one of the most interesting things to me as we've gone through, you know, filming this is we're talking about getting out of a rut, but I haven't heard you use the word motivation, I think, a single time.
Yeah.
Is motivation crap?
You know, I kind of look at it this way. Motivation has to be internal long before it's external. I can tell you that when I was trying to break free, I listened to all. Now again, I'm a little dated. I'm a little older, right? So I'm in my 40s, right? So back in the day, we had these little cool things called cassette tapes, right? And on these cassette tapes might be Jim Rohn or Tony Robbins or any number of different speakers along the way.
It was like your YouTube.
It was like my YouTube back in the day. Now, obviously, I kind of use YouTube nowadays. We love YouTube, right? That being said, I learned a long time ago that I could listen to hundreds or thousands or whatever those tapes. In fact, I did listen to hundreds and thousands of tapes. At least it felt like it. At least hours of it, right? I discovered that until that external motivation became an internal focus or an internal fire, all that motivation was doing was almost reminding me of what I didn't have.
Interesting.
Right? So here's why I keep coming back to this outcome focused thing. By being clear on where it is you want to go, understanding why you want it, and it can't be I want a nice big house, right? But you're like me, maybe you're still in a trailer park, or maybe you're rooming with a friend.
So does that not work because your mind just sees how unrealistic it is?
What it sees is there's a huge gap, and the mind cannot lay out the steps to get there.
Is that why you're saying to go step by step?
I say go step by step. So I look at aspirational outcomes, if you will, or goals, if you will, to be a little bit different. I look at them in 12-month increments, 24-month increments, 36-month increments, and 60-month increments. Okay? So I have no problem with having this big, hairy, audacious goal, as they like to say out here, sitting at the 60-month mark, the 5-year mark.
Got it.
Right? But that 5-year mark is not going to be my main focus. Right? I'm going to spend more time laying out some breadcrumbs, if you will, from 5 months back to 12 months. So I have some indicators about how well I'm doing. Am I on track? Am I off track or whatever? But I'm going to focus hardcore on that first 12 months.
You're focused on the milestones that you can hit right now.
Exactly.
So that you feel like you're making progress.
Yeah, because if you're taking activities on a daily basis, okay, you're working as hard as you can, right? You're doing those things. You maybe have a routine. Maybe you've got something that you're kind of working through and you're kind of going through and you're kind of tweaking, right? That's great. Fantastic. The problem that you run into is if you don't have some measurable wins early, you end up defeating your own mind, right? Remember a second ago, I'm gritty and I'm like, you gotta have the never give up attitude and all that kind of stuff. You can only do that so long without having some little win, right? And if you focus on the 12-month goals and outcomes harder, then you're more apt to lay the steps backwards to actually have some milestone wins. For example, people who are in a rut, I would invite them to copy my daily routine. Okay? My daily routine is I'm up at 5 to 5:30 every single morning. I spend 15 to 20 minutes in prayer and meditation before I ever do anything else. Right? I want to be thankful for my life. I want to be thankful for where I'm at. I want to ask God for future opportunities. I want to ask Him for future relationships and influence and wisdom and knowledge and for the right people to interject my life and the wrong people to get out of my life. Like, I want to do that. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get up. I'm grabbing my duffel bag that's already been packed from the night before with my gym clothes. I'm hopping in the car. I'm throwing on my podcast or my YouTube or whatever it is I'm going to do on the way to the gym location. And that program is going to continue in my ear, which is a form of programming. We call them the eyes and the ear gates, right? I'm watching something or I'm listening to something that's empowering my mind, my body, my spirit, right, on a regular basis while I'm working out for 45 minutes, okay? Now, something that I do differently that I think most people don't do, and this is something that I was even sharing with Randy Garn recently, is that I like to segment my specific lives or my area of focus Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, based on what we refer to as the 8 pillars of life. Nothing more than 8 areas of life you got to focus on, right? Financial life, spiritual life, emotional life, physical life, relationships. The one that I don't normally get to typically is called what I refer to as contributional. Yes, I created a word. I don't care. I like the word. But it's contribution, right? Contributional, right? What are my contributional aspects of my life? Because if I do the other 7 right, the contributional side will show itself and take care of itself on its own. So, again, I get up, hit the prayer meditation cycle, grab my stuff, hit the gym, eyes, ears, gates, looking at resources that increase my mind, my body, my soul, and then I go to the activities of my day. Okay, and the activities of my day, the things that I'm supposed to be doing that day, have already been thought through, discussed, and prioritized the prior days before. I then go through my day, and I'm able to use a checkbox and check stuff off, right? As I check stuff off, I'm getting little wins, right? You know, I'm in the process of writing a new book, okay? Well, I need to get a certain number of words on a page a day in order to hit my deadlines to then hit an editing deadline, right? And if I, for some reason, don't get to that daily word count or whatever, that daily page count or whatever, then I feel like I didn't do my part, right? But if I do it, I feel like I can check it off, right? The difference is when I don't do it, I don't condemn myself or criticize myself. Instead, I'm like, okay, I'll just pick myself back up and I'll do it again tomorrow. I'll do double the work tomorrow. So many people, they have one mistake, one flaw, they come off their goal one time, their outcome one time, and they simply just give up, right? You can't do that. Motivation is an inside job. You have to be motivated on the inside. And motivation on the inside comes from the reason of why you're doing the action in the first place. In other words, essentially the short-term gain, right? So if you're focused on short-term gains, but you're not thinking about your long-term vision, you're going to end up with long-term pain. right? You've got to make sure that your motivating values are coming from the inside out. All the other parts and pieces are fine. Like you want to watch a motivational video of some guy pumping weight in the gym, or, you know, I like this one, the Dark Knight's Rising, and the guy's like, you know, doing all the words and the music and stuff like that. I'll use that stuff from time to time if I'm just like, you know, just
if you're having an off day.
I like an off day, you know, get to kind of kickstart, right? But I'm not putting my identity or my beliefs or my hopes and my dreams on whether or not that specific video or that specific audio or that specific relationship is going to give me the result that I need. My motivation, my drive comes from the inside out. For example, I have no problem sharing with you this. And you know this because you've been around me for a long time. My motivation is driven on one purpose: serving the person I used to be. There is a Steven Scoggins out there. Although Steven, in this person's entity, they might be named Lori or Jessica or Brian or John or whoever, right? But there is one out there who's having a hard time making ends meet, who's unclear on life, who just had another failed relationship over and over again, who doesn't have the profession that they want, who doesn't have the focus that they need or the direction that they need or whatever, right? So when I wake up and I put my feet in my shoes every day, I remind myself I'm walking on holy grass. Part of the reason why I wear white shoes, right? And that they're who I'm after. So that means if I'm going to impact that life, I've got to show up every day. I have to show up every day to make that happen. And if I don't show up every day, that person's going to go another day feeling like they don't matter or suffering in silence because they don't know any better.
So you're very clear on what the stakes are
Yep.
of you following your plan versus, you know, falling back into obscurity.
Exactly.
How important is that?
You have to, here's the deal. The level of your success is directly tied to the level of your standards. If you're going to let yourself slide on a regular basis, then you're going to have a life that is built on letting yourself slide on a regular basis. You're either committed to a financial program or you're not. You're committed to a relational development program or you're not. You're committed to being an entrepreneur, a business owner, or you're not, right? You can't be unstable in all of your ways. You can't be double-minded.
That's really powerful because in my experience, every time where I've had that dichotomy where I want this thing so bad, but my actions do not represent that, that is the most miserable feeling I've ever felt in my entire life.
And what emotion does it create?
Guilt, disappointment in myself, regret, the feeling of like,
so now what do those emotions intensify within you?
I don't know. What do you mean by intensified?
So when you have moments of guilt, shame, condemnation, right, what it does is it creates doubt in your overall abilities, which then directly affects your sense of identity, authenticity, and then what kind of potential you really have. I like to say it this way. You are where you are today because that's all you've allowed yourself to be. And if you're going to be something different, you're going to have to allow yourself to be more. And the quickest way to allow yourself to be more is to hold yourself to a higher standard. And if you make a mistake, you get up and try again. You don't beat yourself up. You don't beat yourself up to get breakthrough. Instead, you get up and try again. And that's how you get breakthrough.
That's perfect. All right, just to wrap this up, I guess if you were going to give everyone watching a process, if they feel like they're in a rut after watching this, you unpacked a lot of things here. If you had to give me 3 or 4 steps that's like these are the things you'd recommend to go from rut to out of the rut, what would those be?
Step 1, decide. Decide where it is you're going, why you want to go there, and write it down. Step 1. Step 2, create 5 to 6 action steps based on that direction that you can take starting today at least, right? Starting today at least, or at minimum tomorrow, okay? Decide.
Start quick.
Start quick, start now, don't wait. Step number 3, make sure that those things have some little wins and then hold yourself accountable. And a bonus step 4, keep watching here, that way we can keep helping you.
Perfect. That's all we needed to hear.
As you can see, your questions are important. Do me a favor and drop your questions in the comment section below to make sure we can answer your specific questions. In the meantime, you're probably going to check out this video right here, so check it out. You know, to be a quote-unquote millionaire, there are a lot of steps, a lot of sacrifices, a lot of contributions, a lot of time, a lot of learning, a lot of growth. There's a ton there. At the same time, if